It's 20-odd years since Pearl Harbor. But two ancient opponents are moving into position for a battle in an attic, crammed with skeletons, souvenirs, mementos, old uniforms, and rusted metals. Ghosts from the dim reaches of the past that will lead us into the Twilight Zone.
The Twilight Zone has delivered some of the most unsettling television ever made. From a man who survives the apocalypse only to shatter his reading glasses, to a gremlin on a plane wing that only one hysterical passenger can see. Rod Serling's anthology had a gift for sneaking uncomfortable ideas past network censors under the cover of science fiction and fantasy. But in 1964, near the end of the show's original run, one episode crossed a line that even Serling's genre armor couldn't protect, and CBS made sure it would never air again. Tonight, we're climbing back into that attic and asking why this Twilight Zone episode was banned for 52 years. And before we get into it, if you've ever managed to track this episode down before it finally returned to television in 2016, drop a comment below. Did CBS make the right call pulling it off the air, or was keeping it buried for half a century the bigger mistake? Setting the scene.
I didn't even have to audition. Bob Butler wanted me. That was such a flattering thing, because when you're a young actor, you go to auditions and you compete with everybody else, but I knew the director of the piece, and he wanted me.
The Encounter first aired on May 1st, 1964, near the tail end of the Twilight Zone's 5-season run. By that point, the show had built a reputation for using supernatural premises to examine real anxieties, war guilt, racial prejudice, the weight of the past. Season 5 continued that tradition, though the network and the production were both operating with reduced budgets and a growing sense that the end was near. The premise is deliberately stripped down. A World War II veteran named Fenton, played by Neville Brand, is rummaging through his attic when a young Japanese-American man named Arthur Takamori, played by George Takei, stops by looking for odd jobs. A neighbor sent him over. Fenton invites him up. What follows is one of the most claustrophobic episodes the series ever produced. Brand and Takei are essentially the entire cast. The attic set was intentionally cramped and cluttered, full of wartime relics and the general debris of a life that hasn't moved on. It's an environment designed to make both the characters and the viewer feel trapped, which becomes quite literal as the episode progresses. Takei was just 2 years away from landing his iconic role on Star Trek in 1964, still building his career. The part of Arthur Takamori was a demanding, dramatic showcase, which makes the episode's near-immediate disappearance from the airwaves all the more striking. The Cursed Katana.
Amongst his memorabilia is a Japanese samurai sword that he took off of a Japanese soldier somewhere in the South Pacific. And from that, the story goes into the Twilight Zone.
The object at the center of the story is a Japanese samurai sword, a katana, that Fenton keeps among his wartime souvenirs. He tells Takamori plainly that he took it off a Japanese soldier he killed in the Pacific. What he initially omits is that the soldier had already surrendered when he killed him. The sword carries an inscription that translates roughly as, "The sword will avenge me," and Fenton mentions, almost casually, that he has tried to sell it, give it away, and throw it out, but it always finds its way back to him. The sword functions as the episode's supernatural engine. When Fenton briefly steps away, Takamori picks it up and mutters, involuntary and with visible confusion, that he's going to kill him. He can't explain why he said it. The implication is that the sword holds some kind of spiritual claim on both men, drawing them towards a reckoning they would otherwise avoid. The writing is smart enough to let you read this either as genuine supernatural force or as a metaphor for unprocessed guilt. The sword witnessed an act of dishonor and won't release the people connected to it until that debt is settled somehow. Either interpretation holds up, and the episode resists forcing a choice between them. What it also does is function as a kind of truth serum. As the tension between the two men escalates, both are pulled into admissions they clearly hadn't planned to make, and neither seems fully in control of himself by the time things reach their conclusion. Buried confessions. The episode's real engine is confession. Fenton eventually acknowledges that he killed the Japanese soldier after the man had surrendered, excusing it by saying his orders were to take no prisoners. The admission doesn't absolve him. He's a man hollowed out by what he did. His marriage is collapsing. His job is gone. He's been drinking alone in this attic and invited a stranger up because he simply can't stand the silence of his own thoughts. Takamori's confession is the one that generated the controversy. He reveals that his father, a construction foreman at Pearl Harbor, was a traitor who helped direct Japanese planes toward their targets during the attack. Takamori watched it happen as a small child. The guilt has followed him his entire life in a way he can barely put into words. Japanese American civil rights organizations were quick to push back. The episode implied that a Japanese American had aided the Pearl Harbor attack, a claim with no historical basis whatsoever, and one that felt especially damaging in context. Tens of thousands of Japanese Americans had been forcibly relocated to internment camps after Pearl Harbor on suspicion of exactly this kind of disloyalty. The episode seemed to many to retroactively validate that injustice. What makes it thornier is the teleplay was not written by Rod Serling, who was himself a Pacific Theater veteran. It was written by Martin M. Goldsmith. Serling's absence from the writing process doesn't explain the controversy away, but it does add a layer of complexity to how the episode has been discussed since. The fallout.
It roused a little controversy with particularly Japanese American and Asian American civil liberties groups and advocacy groups. And so for that reason, CBS pulled that episode.
CBS pulled the episode from syndication shortly after broadcast. It became the only episode from the original run of The Twilight Zone to receive that treatment. All 155 other episodes continued circulating through local television stations for decades. The encounter simply ceased to exist on American airwaves. George Takei, who had a direct and painful connection to the subject matter since he and his family were sent to an internment camp after Pearl Harbor, did not condemn the episode outright. In later interviews, he acknowledged the controversy, but also argued that The Twilight Zone was never intended to be read as fact. He described it as operating in a fictional dimension and expressed regret that some viewers took the storyline as a historical claim rather than a Twilight Zone conceit. The timing of the episode sharpened the reaction. It aired in 1964 as American military involvement in Vietnam was escalating, a period of heightened sensitivity around anti-Asian attitudes in American culture. A network television episode that appeared to assign blame for Pearl Harbor to a Japanese American character, even within a clearly fantastical framework, landed at a particularly combustible moment. The long road back.
And it has a unique distinction of being the only Twilight Zone series that was aired only once. It's never been re-aired. It's never enjoyed a rerun. And shucks darn, I missed out on my residuals on that one.
The episode didn't vanish completely. It surfaced in home video collections of the series over the years, so dedicated fans with the right resources could find it. But it was absent from broadcast and cable syndication for over half a century, which kept it effectively outside the cultural conversation during most of the show's long and celebrated afterlife. That changed on January 1st, 2016, when Sci-Fi aired it during their annual New Year's Day Twilight Zone marathon. It was a quiet return, without particular fanfare, and the episode has since become available on Paramount Plus alongside the rest of the original series. Watched now, the episode is uncomfortable in ways that go beyond the contested premise. Brand and Takei give committed, coiled performances inside a story that refuses easy resolution. The attic closes in around them. Nobody's redeemed. The supernatural machinery delivers its verdict without mercy, and it leaves both characters destroyed. It also continues to raise a question the entertainment industry still wrestles with, whether pulling something from circulation is a form of protection or simply a form of erasure. Either way, The Encounter remains the only Twilight Zone episode ever banned from syndication, a distinction it holds entirely alone. Now it's time to hear from you. Did CBS make the right call, keeping The Encounter off the air for 52 years, or did burying it do more harm than good? Let us know in the comments section below.